And it's amazing how long it takes for the recording to actually be processed. It usually takes 2 hours for that 1 hour recording to be processed and changed into a format that I can post online. It just happens in the background. So that's why it takes a long time for me to post the recordings. All right, so it's 12 o'clock. Let's get started. We were talking about being punctual. Friends are coming in. So welcome everyone who's on the call with us. This is our 5th day of GTF Mind Treasure summer camp or pre-summer camp, whatever we like to call it. I have selected a opening quote for today, and then we'll get into our accountability lesson and so forth. So what I selected today is from the Baha'i writings that talks about the equality of men and women. So it says, the world of humanity has two wings. One is woman and the other men. Not until both wings are equally developed can the bird fly. Should one wing remain weak, flight is impossible. So I know that we have some friends here that are married. There's some that have children, that are family. So as you see, the work that we are doing, everyone has to participate in it. It cannot be just one of the spouses or the children. It requires everyone to be engaged in this. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, yesterday there was a question whether we can utilize this curriculum for personal use or to use and use it to teach to others. And that definitely is the case. The program, the entire program is available. And I thought we would go through and share how we present, because you've seen only one way that we present the program. So our idea is that, as we've talked about, financial literacy is a lot about development of habits and characters, which can start at a very young age. I would say from age 1. Giving our children responsibility. I remember when our boys were very young, they had to clean their toys and not leave them. So that started very early, as soon as they started walking and being able to play with toys. At a young age, they can learn how to share the things that they have. It doesn't have to be necessarily money. I know children sometimes they love to hang on to the things that they have, so they can learn to be patient, to have moderation. And again, these days, our children are born with a cell phone in their hands. So teaching them that they cannot be constantly on their phone is quite important, especially when they see us parents being on our computers, on our phone all the time. It's very difficult to tell them not to do. So we need to set examples. From age 5, that is, we think that start giving allowance, regular allowance at home is very important. It's not a culture that has been developed in many locations around the world. Even here in the US, many parents do not give allowance or do not believe in giving allowance. But again, because our children are being born and raised in more of a materialistic society these days, it's so important for them to start getting allowance. Doesn't matter how much. It can be stickers, it can be points, it doesn't even have to be money. But it is quite important that they begin receiving allowance, not necessarily to do their chores. The official age that we have started using the ABCs of Wealth curriculum is from grade 3 in schools. That's what we have been doing here in San Diego and in other locations too. That's when we found that grade 3 or grade 4, that is when children are starting to take more responsibility for at school, at home, and their math, and then also their reading level and writing level as at the point that they can actually use the official curriculum. So for that, we only do the basic level and not the way we have been presenting in these 5 days. What we have been doing these past 5 days, as you'll see, it's a combination of basic and advanced level. So for example, at age 8, they don't necessarily need to learn about budgets and balance sheets and profit and loss and so forth, or borrowing, some stuff. So the basic level, that is what's presented to at that age. From the age 14 or 15, we do the basic level. and then we continue to the advanced level. And that includes 20 weekly sessions. So most of the programs that we do them in schools. They're done once a week, 60 to 90 minutes. Definitely with the younger ones, when we do it in schools or community centers, we need that much. We need 60 to 90 minutes. Uh, so for ages 5 through 15 or 14, as I said, we don't use the budget or the income expense tracking, but they use the register book and a treasure box. And I'll have a couple of slides about the treasure box and the register book. So when we do the programs in schools, we give them play money as allowance. So they understand how to manage, how much to receive, how do they manage it, how do they allocate it to different boxes. So from age 18 and up, which includes the adults, that is when we do the combination of basic and advanced level. This is where we do a lot more of the technical aspects of finances, such as the budgeting, the stuff that we've talked about, retirement accounts that we'll be getting into next week, credit, that's something that they can understand at younger age, but really they begin to understand how it's utilized in society, and then personal finances. So please think about if you have any questions on this that we can answer, please post it in the chat. We can answer and we can come back to it. But I will go through, and I have a few more slides about this. One is the treasure box. So this is the treasure box that we use. We give a blank box to every student. They decorate it. It becomes personalized. It's a great tool that we use during the program when we are in school. So the box stays in the classroom. The students use it, and then they take it home after we are done with the program. That's when the education continues, because as we have talked about, what we learn in classroom is just the beginning. Finances is not something that we can learn in like 10, 20 sessions. It's a lifetime endeavor that continues to grow over time. This is how we use the treasure box. So inside the treasure box, there are 4 slots: spend, share, invest, and save. So every time, again, when we go to the classroom, they can record how much they receive in the register book, either on the paper or in the online workbook. Both of them can be used in the classroom. So usually give them $20. They understand that first they need to allocate money for spend, and then share, and then invest and save. They also learn to set a goal. This one is a cell phone. Somebody wants to buy a cell phone, how much it is, just like what we set our goals. Children can set goals too. And then every time they put their money into the treasure boxes in the different slots, and we act as a bank. So Mind Treasure staff, we have a bank of Mind Treasures that don't only give them allowance, but also give them interest for the money that they put in to their box. And the last slide that I want to show about how to implement this, the most effective place to run financial literacy is at the school during the day. We know that it's very difficult. That's not where we started from. Our program 15 years ago started from after-hour programs. And then little by little, we were able to, once people, schools and principals and teachers got to know us, we were able to bring the program into the daytime. So now that's what we do. We approach the principals when they like it. They approach their teachers. And then when they like it, they give us, again, 60 to 90 minutes, hour to hour and a half, once a week, so we can go in and work with the students. Generally, teachers are in the classrooms with us. Our hope is that teachers will eventually teach this curriculum on their own, but at this point, it has not happened yet. They are, at least here in US, and I know in UK was the same, teachers are very busy with their own tasks that they do not want to take any additional tasks. So this is how, again, the program is run. The curriculum can be used online, or it can be used printed workbook, which is everything that you need is in there. The material that's needed to run the class are very simple. It's the box, printed workbook. I think in most places in Africa, it would be printed workbook. Printing play money. That's something that we can all do. And then there's pen, pencil, some decoration for decorating the boxes. So it's very simple. There's really not much more than you really need. Uh, so I don't see any questions. Again, if you have any questions about how to implement this in your local community, would be more than happy to answer any questions. Let's go to um, our a review of what we did yesterday and our lesson plan for today. Barry, would you like to do a quick review of what we did yesterday? Then I'll do the accountability.
Okay, sure. And I hope that I don't freeze when you don't talk. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Good to be with you. And so yesterday we talked about responsibility, and then also responsibilities. What is all comprised of each responsibility that you have. We also talked about allowance. And the fact that we believe that allowance should not be tied to the chores that your children may have, that the chores that they have at home would be a contribution to being part of the family. And then we also talked about not only being responsible for ourselves and our family, but our community. And you all shared about different challenges that you saw in your community and also different solutions. And there were certainly a lot of different ways in which those challenges could be addressed. And I think that pretty much sums it up for yesterday's lesson, does it not? Oh, we also talked about borrowing yesterday. Is that correct?
Borrowing, we're going to start today. So we just gave him assignment. We're going to do the borrowing today. That's the focus for today.
All right. The days are running together for me.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Barry. So today's lesson plan is about accountability and borrowing. Borrowing is something that is part of everyone's life. Even from young age, we do borrow for things. We might borrow a pencil. We might borrow a pen. Simple, we might borrow a dress. That's the basic form of borrowing. But before we get to borrowing, yesterday we talked about our responsibility to others and the challenges were listed. Dirty neighborhoods, stench in gutters, and so forth. And we talked about, should we just talk about them and say that these are the problems and expect maybe our government to do something? Or is this something that we can take part in our community and maybe organize people to do more and more of it, to take control of what's happening in our neighborhood? So now we're following with that. The first thing that we wanted to do is to list out what is it that is already in our community, just to make sure that we have everything. So in class, we usually ask for students to put in, where do they get their nutrition? Supermarket, farmer's market. And often we have them even write down the names of places that they can go to so everybody knows to understand. Are there enough places to go shopping for clothing? I will just use the names for here in US, and you can think of your own stores in here. So some of the stores that we have, is there a place to go? Yes, there's a place called Ross that we can go get clothing. Our physical health, is there a clinic close by that we can go when we get sick to get our, if not, maybe that's something that we need to do. Our mental health, there's a lot of different places that we can think about mental health. One place would be, I mean, there are so many different places. People do yoga. They walk in a park, even though that it is a physical thing, but it can help us mentally. Maybe a library where we can borrow books, even though that I don't know who's, there are some people that still borrow books, but then we do a lot of reading on the internet, I think more than ever. Our emotional health, where are there places where we can just provide emotional help when someone is sad? We can just be a listening ear to them, not give them any advice, but just listen to them. Houses of worship, again, Um, our churches, mosques, uh, Baha'i temples. There's a Baha'i temple actually in Kampala. For our friends that live there, they know where that is. Um, our education system, is there enough school for us to go to? Is the quality of the school to go to? Both at, I mean, all different levels, primary, secondary, and so forth. Who makes the rules and laws? Government, usually our governments do. Do we have, is there enough uh, police and security? Police, uh, and then maybe fire department to take care of our needs. Houses of justice. When governments set laws, then our police is responsible for capturing those that break the laws, but then also we need a system to kind of see, did they really break the law or not, to bring justice to them. And that is our, hopefully our court system. We're hoping that our justice system is just and not just think about it. Our houses of finance, there are banks. So the next question for the group is that beside banks, what other financial institutions are in your community? We have some here, but I want to see what is happening there. What is in Ghana? What is in Nigeria as far as banks? Because I think there are other financial institutions too. Yes, military. That is definitely. So what other types of financial institutions are in your country? And I will share later on what it is. Our transportation system. One thing that U.S. really is missing is a good transportation system because of the monopoly that oil and then the automobile companies have. We are one of the technologically advanced countries in the world, and we do not have any high-speed train. While the rest of the world has so much high-speed train, we do not have even a kilometer of high-speed train. It just doesn't exist here. All right, so for our banking system, we have some answers here. We have mobile, savings and loans. Okay, those are all coming. Microfinance is another one. How about what we call here, what we have in the U.S. is called payday loans. And the way they work, basically, you can pre-sell the check or the money that you're supposed to get from your employer. So let's say you're supposed to receive $100 from your employer on the 15th of the month, but you really need the money on the 1st of the month. Our payday loans you can go in there. Instead of $100, they will give you maybe $60, but they'll give it to you on the 1st of the month. It is unfortunately a very bad financial solution, but we see that is something that a lot of people use. Henry says credit unions, great. We also have credit unions here too. And we will talk more about the difference between credit unions and banks. Okay. There's a common negative belief in Ghana and Africa at large that when you start giving money to kids, you're actually encouraging them to be bad and irresponsible when they grow up. That's very interesting. Thank you, Emmanuel. Well, it's a cultural thing. We definitely need to kind of change that because, again, when most of us were growing, we did not have all these distractions. We did not have internet. Maybe that is. I have even heard that from some parents here too. A few months ago, a parent says, I don't want to brainwash my child by giving her some money and then ask her to donate. And my response was that, well, we brainwash our children to pray from a young age, don't we? I mean, if you look at it, we tell our children that they need to follow what religion the parents have been following for years and years, or for generations, or for centuries, or for millenniums. So while we shouldn't do that, we need to teach them how to actually use it. Again, this is a family thing, but we really see that it makes a difference in for children to start very young. We have to be careful about it. Yes, there is some, I think, uh, drawback that may children may think that, oh, now that they have allowance they can buy everything, but the effect that we have seen, most often children, they just ask their parents for things to buy. But when they receive an allowance and they learn that, oh, if I receive an allowance and then I want to buy something, and if I start saving it and it costs, their mindset totally changes. They stop asking because now they understand how the system works. And as they grow up, they actually now understand a goal that they want to achieve. They need to save for it, patiently save for it. So thank you for that, Emmanuel. So we talked about transportation. Entertainment could be our movie theaters, our cinemas, theaters, a lot of different things, music halls, and so forth. Uh, so coming up with the community essentials. So that's the next question in here. Do you can you think of something that does not exist in your community? It could be like a place or something that we can work on, or you can work on as a team with your friends or with your neighborhood to bring in. It could be something that we talked about yesterday. So let's look at our yesterday's list. Busy environment. Okay, maybe youth in the community. Is there a place for the youth, a safe place for the youth to come in and get the education, not just the academic education, because they're getting that in school, but other type of education. So Felicia says a community park. That's perfect. That's something. A library. A lot of people, Felicia is writing library. So there's certain things that we can think about, and in order to do this, there was actually a question yesterday from I can't remember in the WhatsApp that said, well, what if we have a social action project and we don't have enough money? And we will be talking about that. But let's think about borrowing, because oftentimes we need to borrow. A computer cafe, roads, walkways. There's so much that we can do only if we can leave our electronics behind and just concentrate on how we can engage our community, our neighbors to get together. All right. So let's move on to borrowing, and I have picked up some example in here. I was actually shopping in Accra for real estate last night and clothing. So those are the examples that I have said. Before we move on to that, any question on what we've shared so far? If you have any question on the topics that we did so far, on just community building. So what the process that we went through is the community building process. My community lacks rehabilitation center. Those are things that we can definitely work on. And you'll be amazed at when we start, as we will see, we may not have enough money to start a project, but money is not always everything. A lot of people think that I need to have a lot of money, but our human resources is much more important. I think I shared with everyone that Mind Treasures, when we started 15 years ago, we did not put any money into it. The first few sessions that I did, I only had 5 or 6 students, and the parents paid for the class. But then parents they were not interested in those that could pay for a class like this. They were much more interested in doing athletic, even golf, cooking classes, Lego classes, music classes, but they did not want to pay for financial education, which is so important. But then we were able to, we used that seed money, and then we did very little fundraising. I think the first fundraising that we did was only $3,000. But from that, we were able to start little by little. So our initial class of only 4 children became 10, and then became 50 every year, and then 100. And now we're doing into 1,000 every year by getting sponsorship from banks, from the government, from individuals, from organizations. It did not happen on the first year. It took several times, and it will continue to grow. But we always relied on spiritual forces. I was chatting with Emmanuel last night, and I asked him to pray for me because the work that's being presented here, it takes a lot of time, and I hope that I have the energy and the time to continue to support this because this is our passion here. All right, let's get into borrowing and whether it's how do we borrow and how do we do things. So I had initially when with Emmanuel we were looking at doing this project. I asked them what are the challenges in Ghana. So I like to ask that. So the next question is, what are some of the financial challenges in Ghana? And then I'll share what he said. Is it banking services? Is it people not having enough money? Let's see. Are people borrowing for more than what they need, or do they just borrow for their life necessities? So if some people can put in what financial challenges do exist in Ghana, in Nigeria. I think we have everyone here. I'll just take a quick look through the list. All right. Huge interest on loans. Okay. Interest loans are huge. Okay. Guidance and counseling centers to coach and help young people in their decision making. Okay. Difficulty in accessing bank loans. Okay. So those are challenges. All right. One of the challenges that Emmanuel shared with me was that people are borrowing because I believe what has happened in Ghana is that banks has frozen people's assets. That is what has happened for the past few years. And now people are borrowing from the banks themselves because they cannot access their cash. But they're not borrowing for life necessities. They're borrowing for a new garment when they are going, every time they're going to a event or a gathering, they feel like they need a new garment. Is that a true statement? Okay, so it says in Ghana, most of the financial institutions are illegally formed, and so their license is revoked. Okay, all right. So Felicia says, very true. So that's the example we're going to look at. And again, I tried to find as much as I could while I was shopping last night. So we're looking at if you want to attend evening gatherings, and it's not just one gathering. I wanted to see what is. So what I found, I said, all right, if you're going to attend 10 gatherings in like 1 or 2 years, we may need like 10 garments. I took an average of $75 or 75 Ghanaian cedis for a dress or for a garment. And if you're borrowing for it, you're taking a personal loan. I believe credit cards are not popular in Ghana, from what I understand, but we will look at it. And as interest rate is 15% interest rate reasonable if you're borrowing money from a bank? I think that's what I found. Or should I go higher than 15%? So if we are borrowing 750 cedis at 15%, and the bank is expecting us to pay it back in 2 years, and in 2 years we would need to pay 36 cedis every month to pay this 750 back in 2 years. That means that for 750, we are paying 123 cedis in interest. And that means that the garments that we thought we will be paying 750 now actually cost 873 cedis. So that means that what we just purchased is has an overload cost of 16%. Now, when we look at it, new garments don't appreciate. They actually depreciate in value. Once you wear it a few times, often people feel like, oh, they have already seen me with this garment. I cannot do this again. I have to buy a new one. So the question is that the right thing to do or not? It is not considered an asset. It is not, but you have the liability. You have that 873 sits as a liability. So let me see some of the comments that are coming in. High dependency rate. This has led to increase in corruption. Okay. For weddings, Fleischer says for weddings, funerals, parties, some people go for loans, which they find difficult to pay. So that is, and I totally understand the culture because I come from a culture that very similar. In Iran, it's very similar. People really look at each other. Even here in the US, we have a saying that we do not live for the next door neighbor. They're called the Joneses. But a lot of people always look at their next door neighbor to see what type of car they have, what type of clothing they're wearing. And if that's what we concentrate on, that's all we will be doing our lives and not thinking about the life essentials. I like to go back and say that we are born with nothing on our body and we leave this world with nothing on our body. If people want to judge us by what we wear, let them do that because at the end, uh, high fertility rate. Okay, thank you. I said, all right, high fertility rate. And that I think that even the high fertility rate could be with large families, that could be through education. Hopefully we'll have a chance. So that is one example if you take a personal loan. Now, I don't see our friends, oh, actually I do see Regina from UK. I know UK credit card are very customary, so are in US. So let's look at the case of what happens if we purchase that same number of garments for the same amount if we were to purchase it on a credit card. Let me see what the manager says. There have also been a lot of Ponzi schemes in the last 5 years, has also affected a lot of people. This dubious institutions such as DKM, God is Love, etc., promise 50% above interest. In the end, they swipe their customers. So before, let me talk about that before we go to the case of the credit card. Our human being, we are easily deceived through our eyes and through our ears for a lot of different things. For when we walk into a restaurant, our stomach says, as soon as we walk into a restaurant, we smell. When we smell the food, our brain says, oh, I'm hungry, I want it all. And then we see the food. And then again, our sight tells us we want a lot. We want to eat as much as we want to put as much as possible on our plate. But then our stomach, this is something that we talk about in class. Our stomach is only the size of our fist. This is the size of everybody's stomach. So imagine putting that much in there. Now, how do we control? How do we learn to control? We have our brain to think about that our eyes, our nose, and our ears are so deceiving, but we have a brain to think about. And that totally applies into our finances. While people are trying to scheme us or scam us for money, we really need to think about, is this true? And not make decisions out of desperation. And that happens all the time. It happens here so much in US, even on regular basis. My son just found a car that is in New York, and he says the car is a really good price. It would even be worth it to buy the car and ship it here. But then I'm telling him that just because it looks like a good deal doesn't necessarily mean like it's a good deal. So when an organization, when an institution, especially one that's scamming, offers 50% interest, you really have to think about, is that even possible? Yes, our desire says, oh, that's a great deal. Let me go and get that, put my money in there. But then we know. So there is one of the principles of the Baha'i faith is it's independent. So in everything in our lives, we have to investigate everything by ourselves. Of course, at times, we need to rely on other people to give us advice, but then we can think. The worst thing that we can do, just blindly follow someone else. And that is true for everything. It is true for our finances. It is true for our relationships. It's true for our education. It's true for our our spirituality. We should not be just following others, our parents, or others. We have to really think about the information that's presented to us. Often something when we are told might be good for something that happened in the past. For example, in 2008, when the economy crashed around the world, there were really good prices for purchasing real estate. That was an opportunity to purchase real estate. Well, that opportunity now is not there. So if someone comes and says, oh, look at what happened in 2008, you can do the same thing, we have to think about, well, maybe not. Felicia says, people also go for loans from non-banking entities, from individuals, and such loans attract interest of more than 50%. You, the borrower, then work to pay the loan for a long period. At the end, you lose everything, you lose your business. That's so true. So look at this thing. If we spend almost 900 SIDS for a few dress that it really didn't matter, and often we come out of a gathering thinking that the food wasn't good, the entertainment wasn't good, but why did we spend that much money? So let's look at what happens if we do the same thing on a credit card. Credit cards are usually have a much higher interest rates, and they are much more flexible as far as paying back. So same 750 SID getting on a credit card. Here in the US, it's about 25% on the credit card. They allow you to make a monthly payment, which is only 1% of the balance. That's called the minimum balance. They don't want 36. They say, oh, you can pay this only 7.5 SID every month. That means, I need to divide this by 12. So that means instead of paying the loan back in 2 years, it will take you 4.5 years to pay. But then also look, the interest is 340 SID. This is not, the total cost is about 4,000, something like this. The formula is not working correct, I know. So it's not. All right, the formula was working last night, but it's not. But anyway, the total, I think it came out to about 4,000 SID. So 750 became 4,000 by the time we paid it back. It is crazy. Now let's look at, so these are what's called a bad debt, a personal loan, and then what's called a worse debt, credit cards for using our personal advances, for personal day-to-day stuff, unless if it's an emergency. Okay, credit card. Now, let's say we actually make an investment, so a better debt. We're not against borrowing money, but when it's used for the right purposes. So I think yesterday somebody said that they would like to buy a land. Well, that's an item to purchase. Why do we want to buy a land? It's to build a house. Again, why to build a house? Is to leave a legacy for my children. That is the advancement that we want to make. Often we don't categorize, we just say, I want to buy a land. Why? Well, I don't know, I just want to buy the land. So we have to really think about it. So I looked at, I think Bank of Ghana, if I'm not mistaken, they allow up to 5,000 SIDS in mortgage at 15%. They allow maximum of 5 years to be paid back. And what was interesting is that they expect the borrower to pay it back in before they're age 60. That is something that I don't know if it's common in Ghana, but I saw it in that one bank. We don't have that limitation here. So over that time, we will pay a lot of interest. We will pay 2,000 SIDS in interest. So something that we purchased for 5,000 will cost us actually 7. If you look at it, why do we want to do that? But then let's look at here. This is an asset that appreciates. So when we buy the land for 5,000, hopefully over time, the price goes up. The garments that we buy, their prices definitely don't go up. And once we use it, it is a few times. If anybody uses it for a few times, it really cannot be, or most people don't want to even use it more than that. So we got the land, but that's not enough because a land, you can't really do anything with it. So let's say you put a house on it, but even better yet, a best debt is something that produces income for us. Let's say if you want to purchase an apartment. Why do we want to purchase an apartment? Is because that can generate income. Why do we want it to generate income? because that provides financial independency. We can also go one more level. Why do we want to have financial independency? Because we want to help the community, the entire population advance. Remember, when we started, there were three spiritual goals for us. One was to know God and to worship Him. The second was to develop the characteristics that our soul needs for the next life. And the last one was to help this society advance and move forward. And that's where the social action projects come in. So I was able to find, this is, I think, the apartment. Let me see. I found an apartment, and you guys can tell me whether it's a good place or not. This is what I found. It does give the area, Preston Place in East Legon. Is this a good place to buy a rental property? And the prices are actually looking very attractive if it is true. So the price of the apartment, it says it's 400,000 SIDS. And then it gives some, let's see, please share. What do you think of this apartment? Okay, that's Jade saying. Sorry, I'm reading your post, Jade. It says that it has an average rental income. I don't know why the purchase price is in SIDS, but then the monthly rent has been listed in dollars. But anyway, when I look at this, it is like, wow, this is very attractive. Of course, I do not, I mean, I'm from US, I'm here, I haven't seen the place, I don't even know if this exists or not. So if I were ever to come and buy this place, so Mohammed says, this is good, I wish this was such a thing in Nigeria. So from our friends in Accra, is this real? I mean, not necessarily, but just generally, is this something that can be doable? So it does produce some income. And that is the general rule everywhere. If we find a good property, if we find something that we can do. So that's one investment. Let's see. These are houses that only middle and upper class. Okay. It is real. Okay. So we're not talking who can afford this. We just want to make sure that it is real. Okay. Yep. I think it's good. East Legon is a highly coveted neighborhood where land appreciates really fast. So that is perfect. Now, this may not be our starting point, but we're just using this as an example. So we see that it does produce some income. I don't know why it says 650 to 3,000 per month, because I'm not familiar with the system. But let's go back to our sheet. So when we go back to our sheet, we purchased this for 400,000 SIDS. Let's say, again, the Bank of Ghana that I looked at, this was the bank that I was looking at. So here they advertise 15 loans that must be paid in 15 years, and it has a 15%. So this was for the land, and there was an area. Move this. There we go. I think for the apartment, it has the same thing. This is for first time purchase. That is now, again, I'm not advertising the bank. I don't know if this is correct or not, but this is just what I found on the internet. So going back to my sheet, at 15%, they're expecting the loan to be paid back in 15 years. It is a very high monthly payment that they're expecting. Over that 15 years, we'll be paying a total of 7,000 SIDS in interest. So yeah, that formula is not working fine. So we are actually paying, if we buy it for 400,000, we are, by the time we're done, the apartment will cost about 800,000. It will cost twice or maybe more than that, 900,000. But then it is an asset that appreciates, it definitely appreciates, and it definitely has some income. It can produce income. Again, we are just using this as an example. I know that this probably is not affordable for a lot of people, and this is not what we're saying, but just as an example, this definitely. So we see the purpose of this is to compare. Do I want to just look good for the gatherings that I go to, or do I prefer to save my money and do something with it that can secure my personal life, my family, and my future too? That is the question. So the next question that I'd like to buy, are there other examples? We have about 15 minutes left. Are there other examples that you like to think about as a good investment in your area based on your economy and based on your financial situation? But that is how the comparison on the borrowing works. So I'll give a little time to see anybody has any idea. Other things that I can think of, we can borrow for our staff. Barry, Irma, can you guys think of other things that we can borrow and have or invest in? Nari, I think Nari's online.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that last question.
So the question is, what are other things that we can invest in that will help us generate income that can support us financially?
Savings bonds?
Savings, bonds, exactly. Those are the things that we can do. So stocks is another one. Jay, you got something? All right, we have what?
I was going to say CDs.
CDs. Okay. Well, CDs are not really investing. Those are just a higher interest rate. But we'll talk more about CDs next week. So Isaac says fish farming. Yes, a farm that we can start. Any kind of business. The most important is to really think about real estate development, treasury bonds. Yes, those are all things. The most important thing is should we sacrifice a little bit of our comfort, or not even comfort, because when I look at, and I'm just keep on using this example of the dress. I grew up in a family that we always looked okay. My father was a doctor. Our family was we could afford a lot of stuff, but we never cared about what other people thought of how we looked. Of course, we always looked good. We always looked fine. But if my mom wore the same dress several times, it really didn't matter. It didn't really matter to her. But because of all and it's the same thing even right now in our family, is that we really don't pay too much attention to what other people think about us. And that has allowed us to be financially independent. So a few other things: crop and animal farming, schools, investing in all that alternative power supply like solar. That's perfect. That is something that is coming in. More and more societies are going towards renewable and clean energy. Boutiques, buying and selling on Amazon, definitely, those are all the things that we can do. So the point is spending only on our life necessities, because we shouldn't care what other people think of us, and then borrow responsibly. Borrowing on credit cards are our best friends. And when we work with populations and societies that they use credit card, if you learn how to use a credit card, it can be actually very beneficial. Just an example, in US, many families, many people have so much credit card debt that there's absolutely no way that they can pay that off in their lifetime. But then we have been using our credit cards so much, and we benefit so much from it. It's crazy. Fishing is big in Ghana. That is a great example. Okay, that's Jay said that. Looking at the global crisis of the COVID pandemic, is it advisable to go into bonds and T-bills? That is a very specific question that I'm sorry we cannot answer, especially not knowing your system in Ghana. You would have to ask someone locally about that. That we don't know. ICT development related to products are emerging strongly. Okay, selling drinking water in Ghana. So there's so much that we can think about. There's so many opportunities that we can think about that would require borrowing, but we need to have the discipline. We need to be responsible. We need to have accountability. I like to ask this question: how do financial institutions know that a person is reliable before they give them a loan? In Ghana and Nigeria, I know how the system works in UK because we just did program with our friends in UK. But in Ghana and Nigeria, if you go to a bank and try to get a loan, whether it's personal or business, uh, how do they know if you're reliable? We have a credit monitoring system in US and Canada and UK, and I think a lot of countries. But how is it in Ghana and Nigeria? And then we'll wrap up today's session. Okay. So while we're waiting for that question to be answered, I can. Okay, so you can use your business and properties as a collateral. That is good. But do they look at your borrowing? Is there a system to look at your borrowing history to know whether you are a responsible borrower or not? Assessing personal financial history. Okay. If you're a government worker on salary, it is easy. Okay. All right. Very good. So there are salary workers. Okay. So it seems like, and that is the system that so going back to presenting this program to others, I'm going to segue into go back to our material here. So when we present this program into youth and adults, the advanced level has more of a technical aspects of finances, which talks about banking services and like retirement accounts. There's some generic things in there that you have been seeing, and we'll also go through it. But then this file is solely based on U.S. economic system, like how our credit card system work, how our banking services work, and so forth. So in your country, if you're planning on using this for youth and adults, you would need to create something. You can use the example that we have used and use that to create something. You may need to talk to people that understand the financial system. And again, present it as an educational program only. That's one of the things. Another thing that's very important for people that work with us is to never provide any financial advice. As you've seen several times, our friends here in this forum have asked, should I do T-bonds? Should I do insurance, life insurance? Should I do this? That we cannot do, and I really encourage everyone or discourage everyone from giving advice if you're not a professional person. Education we can provide to everyone. It is just like going to school. When we go to school, they teach us math, they teach us physics, but they never tell us how to apply it, which is a downfall. And they never guarantee that the education that we're receiving will bring us money, will make us successful in life. That is up to us to understand. So when you are presenting financial education, please keep it education only. Even if you know, never provide a recommendation. So what are you going to invest in? What are you going to invest the loan into? I'm not Samuel. I'm not sure I understand your question. In Nigeria, we don't have a credit monitoring system. You just need to have collateral to be able to borrow. Okay, so that is in certain times it's a blessing because then you cannot over borrow. But then in our society, borrowing is a leveraging. So for example, if we were to purchase, I'm going to go back to the example of buying the house. Here in US, we can buy, let's say, an apartment for $400,000. If I were to buy that cash or borrow the whole thing, first of all, I cannot. We have to have a down payment in there. But when I have a down payment, the bank knows that we have a interest in the program. And then I don't have to have a collateral. The apartment itself becomes the collateral. If for whatever reason I cannot make the monthly payments, the bank will own. Actually, the bank owns the apartment until we pay it off. So there's a lot of differences in here. If you're a small business, your bookkeeping records and end of the year financial statements. Okay, so there are lots of different ways. All right. So in the last 5 minutes, I think as you saw in the WhatsApp chat, the decision is to continue the program next week. And we are really, the Mind Treasure team is really honored and humbled that you like the program, that you like to continue on. We will continue with some of the lesson plans from the basic and the advanced. I haven't really put the agenda together. I'll be doing that either today or tomorrow and post it on WhatsApp. I will not try, I'll try not to give too much assignments for Monday, but really like you to go back and complete. We know that this was very rushed. We were talking fast. I hope I was able to talk slower today. And doing this program once a day, it has its advantages because then we can finish this in 2 weeks. But then this advantage is that we don't have time to really concentrate and reflect on the points that we are learning. So I think even after next week, we will continue to work together. That's a promise that we have. As much energy, as much time that we have, we'll be more than happy to work because I think we're just starting a venture. This is not the end. I have already approached a few of the families to work with them on the family side, on their budget, on their assets, on their liabilities, because it does take a little bit of time. So I'm going to stop here. If anybody has any question about what we talked about today, our staff, Barry, Jade, Nari, Irma, Judy, if any of you would like to add anything before we say goodbye.
Do you want to iterate about the time?
Oh, the time, yes, thank you, Barry. So next week, we will be doing the program 1 hour earlier. Wherever you are, it will be done 1 hour earlier. You've already, everyone should have received the Google Calendar invite, which has the correct time. Please do that. There's a question from Mohammed. I have a question. Could getting loans from the bank to buy a car be seen as a good debt? Yes, it definitely can, especially if that will generate income. That definitely, I mean, a car, we need it from time to time, especially if you can generate income from it. But if you're only going to buy a new car because somebody else has it or our car is a little too old, that is not a good buy. Another question is, are we going to have class tomorrow? No, please. I need a break. I need to catch up with some work. Everyone needs to do some catch up. So no classes tomorrow or Sunday. We will come back on Monday together. Let's see if there's any other questions or any other points. All right. Thank you so much. That's all we had for today. Enjoy your weekend. We will be in touch through WhatsApp. If you have any questions, any follow-up questions, the recording will be posted later on. We'll definitely do that. Continue to work with your friends, with your family, and share everything that you're learning here. Thank you.